All right. Good morning, David. We're here at the virtual NAKHE National Conference 2021. We're presenting on self-talk. We have, in fact, I'm going to share my screen really quickly. If anyone wants to check this out, if they're a member of NAKHE or they're registered for the conference, we've got a video prepared on the research that we've pulled together. We've got a set of slides that exist if people are interested. Let's see, what else have we got? We also have, if people want to dig more into the research that David and I have, Professor Cutton and I have put together, then we have a poster that breaks down the research that we'd be happy to share. And today we are just going to talk about a little bit of our work together. So Professor, can you give us a little background on some of your work in self-talk, and then we can just kind of riff on all the things that have excited us from our work together.
Yeah, and I think we'll probably be posting, we probably should do this, is post the a link to, if we post this on Good Athlete Project, probably put it on the because the chat and everything is saved. Yeah. So we probably should post that before our time ends.
I like that. It's a good idea.
While you're listening to me, you can get on there and post a link so that it will be on there for people to look at even for the next week or so. And
great idea.
Eventually track this video down. That'll make it easier for them. But yeah, the idea of self-talk been involved in researching it since the late 80s. So been studying it for quite a while, and she's a lot of different fields of study. And one of the overriding themes about self-talk is that most people are not aware that they use self-talk.
Right.
And they really haven't thought a lot about it, but yet they use it all the time, which could be kind of dangerous, I guess. You're not aware maybe of how powerful or useful it can be, harmful or helpful, like a lot of things, kind of like stress. I remember many years ago when I first taught a wellness class in college, and remember going over stress management, and students we were going over what causes you stress. And I always have a few students that will say, I don't have any stress in my life. I'm going, oh, okay. I mean, let's start there.
Yeah.
Not even aware.
Right.
And it's like self-talk, you're not even aware. And we use it. And some people use imagery like that as well.
Mm-hmm.
Be talking about something, and visuals will come into their head, and videos will play, and they'll see things that they're going to be doing or whatever. So self-talk is similar. And as I've started to explore it and been fortunate enough to now start working with Jim, it's neat to work with people in many different fields because you get a different perspective. You can easily stay in your own little silo
mm-hmm.
and work with just a certain organization and publish in certain journals, or you can start to look at other fields, as I've started to do, and working with Jim now in coaching and his Good Athlete Project. But even in the last 5 years, I work with people in African American studies, people in philosophy, people in theology,
mm-hmm.
Just all many fields, different areas of education. And as I start to see self-talk, even from a purely psychological standpoint, not necessarily kinesiology, you see different information. So that's been exciting to say that this field is very relevant and people are very interested in it. It'd be nice if we actually shared this information across different fields.
Yeah.
But I think the technology allows a lot of that to happen, especially at conferences like NAKHE, that is very broad in the amount of the people that are there. If you look at the attendees, it's a very broad group of folks.
Yep.
People in business, people that do consulting, people that are in many different areas of academia.
Mm-hmm.
Everything from purely sport and sport business and sport management to teaching to physiologists to you name it, administrators in many fields, even deans and whatnot come to our meetings. So it's exciting to see, this field also is interested by many people. But again, one of the challenges is letting people know that the basics of self-talk, but also some of the concepts related to it.
Sure.
Just to give you an idea, in our study that we did in looking at coaches, the coaches had already been interviewed many times, a few of them years ago, and to be able to go back and look at video and find out that we found out they would share quite frequently their own self-talk.
Mm-hmm.
And we did not prompt them in any way, shape, or form. They were sharing things that they said to themselves on a regular basis.
Yep.
They had no idea when they signed up, and that was a challenge when we got this research approved. I'm sure the committee on campus said, what in the world is this? These people don't know why they're in the study, but they're already in the study because they're already posted online. And
right.
It's kind of an odd, there wasn't any prearranged interview. We're going to ask you about your self-talk, which is what's typically is done.
Right.
Or we're going to try to modify your self-talk and well, you said something negative there. Let's see if we can get you to refocus.
Right.
Doing any of that. We're trying to understand what people are using, how and why, and how diverse it really is. And we're also, again, as I start to look at other fields, one of the more interesting things I've started to explore more recently is, where does the self-talk come from?
Mm-hmm.
What's the source? That's become the most interesting to me, because I hadn't really thought about that at all.
Right.
I kind of, I basically tried to understand what self-talk people had used, why they used it, where they used it, kind of like some of the stuff we did. Where does it
come from? Right.
But and it's also interesting is, where does this come from?
Mm-hmm.
Our own consciousness talking to us?
Right.
Is it, as we found out even in some of the interviews, is it our previous coach echoing what they had said, or something we learned in a workshop? Was it mom or dad? Some people think, some of the research, and I first found this in some of the psychology research, was they see it as some divine being speaking with them. Yeah. So I was going, this is just blowing my head, was like, I don't even know this even existed. I've been studying stuff for decades. So
it's so interesting.
Continues to grow. And I encourage people to, look in different fields, whatever area of study you're interested in, coaching included. You might learn some stuff that you weren't aware of.
David, I think that's amazing advice to sort of broaden our filter of what we're allowing to come in. Because like you said, regardless of the domain, this is happening for everyone all the time in one way or other, whether we name it or not. Yeah. And I guess just to give a quick recap of what we did for the folks who have not yet read our poster or our breakdown, we've been recording at the Good Athlete Project interviews with top tier coaches. We're talking about Hall of Fame caliber people for years now, like you said. And in this evaluation, we found some things that I thought were really interesting. And one of the things was, like you said, a lot of these top tier coaches, maybe they can't even name the capacity. Maybe they can't even say that they're using self-talk, but they obviously, in our conversations, opened up and shared with us that they were, whether it was an intentional act or not. There's no doubt that the inner dialogue was coloring whatever it was that they were bringing to their craft. I think it's really interesting. So I guess and then to finish sort of that point, a little bit of the background, who are some of the, I guess, pioneering researchers in this field? Who are some of the people that you first looked at in the study of self-talk?
Trying to think now, who's some of the earlier researchers. I think there's a whole large group of researchers on self-talk. I don't want to try to pronounce their names because it's some of the Greek names are easy to pronounce, like Hardy.
Yeah.
Why? There's some references on our poster, I think.
Is it Theodorakis? Did I pronounce that?
Theodorakis and Gianulius, and it gets kind of difficult from there. Those are some of the easy ones. But they were really gracious in sharing with some of their research, some that only had been published in Greece. And so they've just been cranking out stuff. There are some other people in the US, but nowhere near the level of stuff that's coming out of Greece.
Yeah.
They really have set the tone, done reviews, and have done applied research and theoretical research. And if you haven't read their stuff, you're really missing. So Hardy's a good start. And there's some other ones like I mentioned too.
I love that idea. And as I'm pulling up our documents for reference here, I wonder, is there anything that stands out to you from some of the work that we did together, which is ongoing? But I thought that, and of course, all of this is anonymous, but again, in the analysis of pretty high achieving people, I thought we found some cool stories. Was there anything that stood out to you?
I think that when I reflect back, and again, I feel myself talking and thinking of what I'm going to say. I use it pretty frequently teaching as well. But in thinking about what we've done with the interviews, things that stood out, especially after the fact, was just how diverse the self-talk was.
Mm-hmm.
And there are categories in the literature that many of these categories don't exist in the literature. Like life lessons, philosophy that they came out with, the life philosophies. That's not, I can tell you right now, it's not in the literature, not anywhere that I've seen.
Right.
Where people start, and because it's not directed, it's not focused. We're letting people just share. They're not biased by us asking questions. And then with that, you kind of bias, and so many people will, as you know, will kind of say what, they think you want to hear.
100%. Right.
Hear about self-talk. Well, let me talk about, and who knows what they're going to say. And they may shield certain things about that are more personal, which that also stood out in the interviews. It became very personal eventually. They're sharing individual, very personal stories about their family, interaction with family members and friends, or very, would be normally very things they wouldn't share about interaction with athletes that were private. They were shared, anonymously, but still, they were things I thought, especially about their life view, how it changed how they view their life and their goals, and why they felt they were doing what they were doing. And that, a lot of times people don't usually share that.
Right.
They will if you ask them, but many times you will not get, I don't think, as genuine as an answer as some of those were. We're just so dynamic, and that really, jumped out. And it started, and again, it answered some of my thoughts, like I mentioned, about where does this come from? You can just imagine where some of this is coming from. Some of them kind of shared even some of that. Like you mentioned, former coaches and things like that. So it was neat to, go into that. Initially, I was thinking, I don't know how much we're going to get.
Yeah.
We didn't say anything about self-talk, and we got boatloads. So,
isn't that amazing?
It takes time anyhow.
For sure. And it's so interesting because you and I have talked about this before. Maybe we shouldn't have been surprised because all the good coaches do it. At least that's something that we're finding out, is that I think what is true is that more often than not, just sort of as a truism, more often than not, you get what you aim at. And there's sort of constant, the conversation between your ears that's going on all the time will have an influence on your behaviors. So it makes sense that some of these high achieving coaches are doing a pretty nice job of that. There's some sort of dialogue going on, whether it's calling upon previous coaches, mentors in their lives. And one thing I would say, because I know Theodorakis mentions different sorts of self-talk, whether it's motivational and instructional. And one thing that I was reminded of, and we talk about this regularly, is that one of the major skill sets within self-talk, as far as I think we saw, was the ability to sort of zoom in and zoom out, to sort of understand the broad, the purpose of the engagement with the individual, and then to meet their individual contextual needs in a moment, and to come in and out. And I want to be healthy. I have to make this nutritional decision. I want to be, I want to be ready for, maybe that's a mid-level. I want to be ready for tomorrow's presentation. Okay, I got to go to bed at a certain hour, or, but they continue to go in and out. I want what's best for the team.
Yeah, so
Now
it's
I
very
need what's
broad.
best for
Yeah.
Brian.
Uh-huh.
Yeah.
Yeah, so it's similar to the theory of attention. I think we talked about this before.
Exactly.
Focus of attention, the research related to that is how the most highly functional, very efficient performers can be very, very, very focused. Basically, see a gnat on the floor, feet in front of them, and see the wings flapping and stuff. Or they can just literally see kind of the entire football field, like in one snapshot, quick.
Mm-hmm.
And they even store that image to what they're going to need, and can dissect an offense or a defense. Sadly, sometimes they're so far advanced than the rest of their teammates that it doesn't happen.
Right. Right. No doubt.
It's in between the eyes, and they go, "What'd you throw the ball to me for, dude? If you would have caught the pass, touchdown."
That's right.
Soccer players the same way. They will see 4 or 5 passes, make all these passes. They can start getting excited. They haven't even made the first pass yet, and they see a goal at the other side.
Right.
But they can also detail where that pass needs to go, like you said, to their teammate, the first one. They can focus in, but they can also see the large and anticipate. And so it's similar to that with self-talk too. It's nice to see some similarities, and it helps in trying to explain, I think, fields that people are less familiar with. More people are probably familiar with attention. There's a lot more research on that. That's been around for a long, long time. So.
Absolutely. Well, absolutely. And I can't help but think of, I wish I was talking about a Chicago Bears quarterback, but I'm talking about Tom Brady, who can see broadly, evaluate the entire situation, the coverage called, the blitz scheme, or at least what's been shown. And then in the moment, laser focus in on the cornerback specifically. And he's taken too many steps in his back pedal. He's going to, the option route's going to come under, and he's going to let it go real quick. So the broad focus, specific focus, back and forth, self-talk probably mimics that in certain ways.
Yeah.
I also, while we're on the topic, I know it's not specifically talking about the paper or what we've been working on together, but can you tell us about some other areas that self-talk is helpful, like the Powerlifter paper you put out, or some other ways that people use self-talk?
Yeah, one of the more interesting things too, and I have an issue with some of the new, and it's been out for a little while, some of the positive psychology research that's been out there, how things need to be positive, and if you can tell by some of our self-talk, some of it is not very positive. And just if you're aware of your self-talk, you're aware that it's not always, that's the nicest thing I could say. It's not very positive many times. Does that necessarily mean it's bad? Kind of like life, it's not always positive. So I think in some ways they're kind of setting people up for, gee, I have these negative thoughts. Maybe I need to go to counseling. Well, maybe, but I just for this all about positive and everyone feeling it's not necessarily bad. In fact, world-class performers are negative to themselves sometimes, very often. The big difference of the successful versus the unsuccessful is that they quickly turn that negative into a positive. They don't well and get, even go into depression and get wallow in how badly I am at the free throw line and just dwell in that. They flip that. Okay, how long you been playing basketball now? You can't make a free throw. Come on, let's go. Make the free throw. We need and they turn it, they flip it. Kind of like the power lifter. It just, they realize the importance of the moment, and they essentially bluff it off, where many people do not. They get caught in the idea of the moment and don't even get a medal, or, they just, you see many that, quite frankly, that they let their negative just wash over them. And again, it's not to say that the elite don't get the same negative. It's kind of like in many other areas of life, philosophy, etc. But they find a way to, again, be aware that this is going on. Wait a minute, don't dwell in this. We need to.
Is it, and dwell is a good word, because I wonder if it's, at least from my experience, I think the important part of determining whether or not self-talk is positive or negative might be in how you respond to the cue. Meaning, if you're in your head saying like, "Let's go, Davis," like, you're running 2 more blocks, like, don't be, don't give up, don't be a quitter or whatever. You could lump that into the category of negative because it's harsh, I guess. But but again, like you said, it kind of depends on how you respond to it. If I'm being really, if I'm being sort of self-critical to a degree, only to a degree that propels me forward into a better place, is that negative self-talk. Whereas if I'm being self-critical to the point where I begin to dwell and spiral and sort of sit in the negative, it seems like the response to the cue really is the determining factor.
So, but like I said, the important is that because some people think, like I mentioned, that, well, those world-class athletes, Tom Brady never questions himself. I would bet he questions himself all the time.
Yeah.
That's why he's as good as he is. He goes, "Come on, Tom. I'm sure haven't talked to Tom Brady, but I would imagine he says, you can do better than that." You see when he gets upset, when he does miss a pass, which is very rare, but still.
It's rare. He threw, I think, almost 40
touchdowns
touchdowns
this year.
Oh,
gee, I'm great. I'll do it next time. It's not you. I guarantee I probably doesn't say that.
I believe he threw 11 interceptions this year, and I'm with you. I doubt he was saying, "It's okay, Tom." He was saying, "This is the mistake I made, and so now I can go correct it."
And he corrects. I'm sure corrects on the fly, and sometimes he's famous for the. Isn't he the one that wound up? They changed the tuck rule. I remember in the famous game against, was it the Raiders? Or it
was against the Raiders in the snow. I remember watching it a long time ago. That was probably, I was in high school, so that was. I
remember what I think many ways what happened is that at least it's my explanation, is that he recognized a problem, but it was too late to change. I mean, you see quarterbacks all the time that kind of, wait a minute, I don't want to throw that.
Clutch,
Too late. You've already sent directions to the brain, throw the ball. Well, you try to correct, things happen too quickly, and you see the ball sometimes, and then of course they have to interpret, was that a fumble? Was that a pass?
Right.
You see batters that try to stop their swing and then they get upset for a strike. There's a point of, at least the literature says, there's a point of no return. And so that's some of the beauty of self-talk, is that you can, maybe even this is another field where it's used a lot by folks in medicine and working with patients and talking them through surgery, but also business. Before they meet a client, they may go over questions they're going to get from the client and actually respond to those and go, how did that kind of sound? And rehearse. And so sometimes you try to prevent, if you can, you can't take those words back. You're starting to say something and kind of like, with the tuck ball, too late now. You already said, whatever you said, it's too late now.
Right.
Once you say a few things. So it's better sometimes to pause. How's that going to sound if I say that? Or at least right after you say it, say, I didn't mean to say that.
Right.
And, feedback is very strong.
In the rehearsal, totally. It sounds like you continue to refer back to an essential idea, which is really developing an awareness. Step 1, awareness. Step 2, intentionality. And that's, like you said, maybe this is sort of the full circle comment, is it's happening all the time. We are using language in our minds constantly. And sometimes, language, like any linguist would say, it's not always even, and this might take us down a road that we don't have time for today, but symbols, it's the phonemes that make up the words, that make up the language that we always use, that works, but just sort of, there are other ways, like you said, imagery. There are other ways that this sort of dialogue is going on between the ears. So to make sure that one is self-aware and then be intentional about the way that self-talk is used is probably some good advice. And based on the research that we've been collecting, it seems like high achieving coaches are doing exactly that.
Yeah, I think that, like I said, we've had a good discussion. I think I don't know how many questions. Our session was early, and I don't know if we posted anything about this on there yet. If you had a chance to do it,
Well, we had just you're totally right, and we just had
we want to
one.
get it up there before the end of our time.
All right.
People
Well,
know.
let's do that because we
Find
actually
your-
just had
find your
one
place.
question. So this is excellent.
Okay.
The question was from Jody, and it was, do you plan on expanding the sample? I'd love to know more about the 5 people we interviewed. And I think the
good.
cliffhanger or the short version is yes. This is fun work. I'm glad to do it with you, David, and I look forward to whatever comes next.
Great.
Excellent. All right. So